Welcome to 24/7's weekly workshop. Today's topic is making the switch to freelance. I'm Emma Rauschkal, the Director of Marketing here at 24/7. And for those of you who aren't as familiar, 24/7 is a recruitment agency. And we help people find creative, marketing, and tech jobs, both freelance and full-time. And we know that it is a difficult time to be on the job hunt. And if you've historically worked in a full-time position, you may have focused your search on other full-time jobs. But if you haven't considered making the switch to freelance, today we're going to tell you some of the benefits of going this route. It's a great way to get in with a destination employer and also grow your career path. And fun fact, 90% of companies actually rely on some form of freelance talent to augment their workforce. So today we're going to share some best practices for making the switch successfully and walk you through why now might be the time to consider it. Before we jump in, some quick housekeeping items. We have you all muted for the duration of the workshop. We did receive a number of great questions through the registration process, so we'll get to those time permitting at the end. And if you have a question, please feel free to submit it through the Q&A function throughout. And we'll be sharing a copy of the recording as well as today's slides after the workshop. And with that, I am very happy to introduce my colleague, Shivani Sharma. She's a senior account manager out of our Portland office. So Shivani, I'm going to turn it to you.
Hi, I'm really excited to talk about this. I think this is a topic that trips a lot of folks up, and I've been at 24/7 for a number of years now in a few different roles, and I've seen many folks transition in their careers over the years using freelance, so I'm excited to talk to you guys about this today. So a number of reasons to consider freelancing. First and foremost, many of you are in the marketing and design space. Agencies use a lot of different people to make their projects happen, and ultimately being able to be one of those available freelancers will get your foot in the door at a client that maybe you couldn't have gotten in at before, because there are a lot more open roles now. Being able to try out those clients and put them on your resume and put those skill sets on your resume as well will help you as you apply to similar roles. And if you're going after a certain brand and maybe there's a freelance opportunity at a similar brand, that's also another way to get yourself in there. And I think that people are relying more on freelancers right now because of what we saw happen with COVID. It is a lot, I suppose, easier to get the right person in for a quick turn project or for an undetermined duration of a project. So really great way to kind of get in there. Another way to consider freelancing is to think about an hourly rate over your salary. You're in control of your rate a lot more than you might be with a full-time role. Oftentimes you have to consider benefits, and maybe if it's a short-term project, like I said, you could even ask for more. Whereas I think with a full-time role, there's a different expectation there. So something to consider that maybe you wouldn't have in the past. And if it is a short-term project, or if it is a short duration of a project, maybe you could do a couple of projects at the same time and make even more money than you might have been in your full-time role.
Yeah, and I think that idea of being able to work on multiple projects at once, it kind of gives you more of a safety net because you don't have all of your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And, you know, over the years, we've seen agencies have huge projects and sometimes they go sideways, and, you know, being able to have something to fall back on is another great way to just keep it moving and keep it rolling and keep yourself busy also.
Definitely.
So I know there are a lot of myths about freelance. People that maybe have freelanced forever, especially in the past, maybe business does come to you, but you will have to work a lot harder without that network to find those clients to hire you. You know, if you are getting work on your own, sometimes clients don't pay on time. And the benefit of working with an agency like 24/7, we have a huge team of folks responsible for just that. Your payroll, your time cards, and making sure everything is on time. And depending on where you live and the duration of your project, something 24/7 does offer is benefits. If you're on a 1099 or you're freelancing on your own, that may not be something that the client would provide, or even with the rate that you come up with on your own would cover for benefits. So it's a really great thing that we do offer that I think a lot of folks maybe don't realize about certain staffing agencies, but 24/7 in particular does do a great job of taking care of our freelancers with benefits. So before you make that switch, I think that it's really important to think about how you would determine your rate. Do you have tools that you would need to buy or download? Do you need to maybe renew a license on a software for InDesign or Photoshop or something like that? So something to consider to create that rate is all of these things. Do you have the tools? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have 40 hours a week? Do you need to get medical, dental, and vision? So being able to kind of figure out what you were making full-time and determine what you might need to supplement that will help you as you either go through an agency or apply on your own for freelance roles, and being really confident in your worth there, especially with all of these things too. I think it will help you get the right roles and land the right opportunities for your future.
Yeah, I think like you really nailed it with just doing this preparation ahead of time too, so you feel confident in going out and selling yourself, like to know what your worth is, to know you have the tools in place, to know how you're going to have, you know, a plan to get clients. That way, when you start your freelance career, you have a strategy set in place.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn. I know we use LinkedIn personally, so really branding yourself there is a great way to try to get your name out to clients as well, and connecting with people that you might be interested in working with in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
So on that note, cleaning up your social profiles. I know as a recruiter, we definitely do look at those things. I know a lot of hiring managers look at those things, and my rule of thumb is that if you wouldn't want your grandmother or your father to see it, probably delete it or hide it from the public. If you are a designer and you don't have a website or a portfolio or a PDF to show your skill set, make sure you get that taken care of before you start applying or before you start engaging with clients, or even for other skill sets, not just design. If you do have a portfolio to share and a website maybe doesn't make sense, I think that having a PDF of your strongest work, especially relevant work to what you're applying to, will put you ahead of your competition that doesn't have that ready to go and ready to present. Oftentimes I have clients that ask for a portfolio when I wouldn't have even thought that they needed one, but having that information ready to go for any employer will really help you. Growing your virtual network, like I said, with LinkedIn, but also most companies have social media at this point. You can follow what they're going up, what they're up to, what kind of things they want you to know. And being in the know about these other companies will also help you present yourself as a great candidate when you do apply or reach out to folks that are on these teams. And finally, have your pitch ready to go. What are you strong in? How are you going to be an efficient member of a team or project? And really being succinct in that. I think a great elevator pitch goes a long way, whether it's a phone call or an email or a LinkedIn message, just really knowing your brand and being able to talk about it confidently.
Yeah, such good points. I mean, as a freelancer, you really are brand you, and you need to be ready to sell yourself at the drop of a hat. Business, again, as you said earlier, isn't going to come to you. So these are great tactics to really be able to sell your product, which is, your own skill set and your own personal brand.
So setting yourself up for success in the freelance world can be difficult, but a couple things to keep yourself focused and ready to go all the time is defining a schedule and where you plan to work. Working from home can be really difficult, especially if maybe you're in a small space or if you're sharing a space with family. So if that is the case, defining your schedule and knowing what your hours are Another benefit of being a freelancer, you can generally pick those hours. If it's 10 to 6 that works for you, then be really diligent about your 10 to 6, or if it's 8 to 4, 8 to 5, whatever it is, define those hours, and the people that are around you, make sure they know as well, so that similar to an office environment, it's undisturbed and you can focus in on what you need to do. Being your own project manager is another thing about working from home and being a freelancer. There may not be someone checking in with you, especially if you're doing multiple pieces of a project. A lot of clients do rely on freelancers to be their own project manager and be able to hit your deadlines and, you know, hit your expectations and be trustworthy, because a lot of the times they will come back to you if you are a freelancer that does these things. Turning off your distractions, I know that can also be hard, but muting the phone or putting in headphones to keep your focus. I have loud neighbors, so I'm a big proponent of the AirPods. And most importantly, keeping your finances organized. I know we talked earlier about following up with your clients if you're not using an agency, but really being diligent about what that looks like. Is it once a week? Is it every other week? How are you making sure that you're being paid for the work that you're doing, as well as, you know, making sure all that's on time?
Yeah, and if it's, you know, if you've traditionally worked in full time, this is going to be a big change. You might have to chase down some of those invoices, so it's good to be on top of that. And I think too, you brought up such a good point. I know I've worked with a longtime freelancer, and she always says, if she's not working, she's not making a paycheck. So defining your schedule is really defining what your income is going to be for that period.
Totally. And if you know you're working on a few different projects, then really being able to balance how much you're giving to each client or each project and hitting those deadlines, like we said.
Exactly. So that is it for the presentation portion, which set us up really nicely for our Q&A. So let's just hop right in. So our first question is, are hiring managers looking for certain qualities in freelance candidates that they might not be looking for in full-time?
That's a great question. I think depending on where or which client, it will depend, but mainly having freelance experience will set you apart from folks that have maybe not done that before. And this is kind of why we're a huge proponent of it. Once you do it once, most agency or heavy freelance team hiring managers will have an inherent trust in a candidate that has that versus someone that doesn't. And if you've never freelanced before, maybe having agency experience or having an array of clients that you have worked with. Maybe it's some package design and some graphic design and some digital design, but some versatility goes a long way.
I think that's a great point. And I think generally speaking across the board, freelance and full-time, those soft skills that really make you successful working remotely, whether it's clear communication, project management, which we touched on earlier, you know, strong written communication, those are all going to be important no matter what the role is.
Yeah.
So our next question is, do you have recommendations for going about finding new clients?
I would take a look at all of the different job boards. You know, there's Indeed, there's LinkedIn, there's Glassdoor, there's our website, 24/7 Talent. Most places have a general job posting of what they're looking for, and trying to identify who might be running with that position and reaching out to them directly, or reaching out to HR at a company. Or really, I've seen a lot of freelancers do this, and I've reached out to them myself, is putting it on LinkedIn that they're available and these are the types of projects I would love to do, or even putting it on your Instagram or your Facebook, wherever you have a network of folks that you think would be interested in your work. I would just put that out there for them, because you would be surprised how many people would come to you at that point.
Yeah, I feel like don't discount the power of social media. You can, as a creative especially, really showcase your work on Instagram if that's a platform you connect with. And I think you made an excellent point earlier, which was follow brands that you're interested. You never know, they might be promoting some open projects that they have, or just by reaching out and making a suggestion, you could develop a connection that way as well.
Totally. And also giving references for people within your network if you're not the right fit. People will remember that. And if the person who was referred does get the role, then maybe they'll think of you for something in the future as well.
Exactly. So our next question is, I'm just starting out in my career. Would you recommend considering freelancing as an option?
Absolutely. I think especially if you are brand new in your career, having any opportunity to put any brand on your resume and be able to put it on your portfolio as paid work will really help you as you apply for any job, whether it's full-time or freelance. I think this will be a great way to either practice skill sets that you've not been able to hone in on. You have the skill set, but maybe you've not been given a project of that type before. Or maybe it's something new that you want to learn how to do and you're being given the opportunity through a freelance role.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And sometimes you can get a position freelance that you might not be able to full time because it's a shorter duration or it's just project based. So there's less of a commitment on the client's end to kind of test you out. And then it gives you the opportunity to really learn some new skills or hone in on a specific area or industry.
It also gives you a really good opportunity to shine in that role. A lot of freelancers turn into full-time folks or turn into long-term freelancers by being trustworthy and, you know, like the slide we talked about earlier, hitting your deadlines and being responsible.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Oh, here's a specific 24/7 question. So what does it cost to work with an agency like 24/7? We get asked this a lot.
As a candidate, it is no cost. We work with our clients to manage a budget that we're given, and we work with you to hit the pay rate that you're looking for, and there's no cost to the candidate for engaging with 24/7. We're here to help ultimately, whether it's the candidate or the client. And yeah, that's one of the best parts. We're here to help you guys, so no fee to engage.
Yeah, I always say it's a free resource, especially if you are looking to get into freelance and you haven't done it before. To your point earlier, it's like getting that first gig under your belt really helps launch you into that freelance career path. So it's definitely great to have the extra eyes looking for assignments for you. So here, how do you go about negotiating a rate if you have a client on retainer?
Interesting. I think that if you have a retainer, that there is a set expectation of what you're supposed to be producing for them, but ultimately you're going to take into account what the work is. If it's a simple project that maybe encompasses 3 skill sets of yours, then I would probably go closer to what you maybe would have been making in a full-time role, or maybe even a little bit less if it's long-term, meaning 40 hours, but ongoing. If it is short-term and you know you're not getting the benefits, but you're on that retainer, I would probably just try to make sure it's sustainable for you through the length of that retainer.
Yeah, and I think you've brought up a really good point just about thinking about any costs you might be incurring in a freelance position that you wouldn't be incurring full time and factoring those into whatever the rate is that you're going to be charging. And it might be really sitting down and doing some kind of scavenging through your bills. Like, are you paying more for internet now, or different tools that you might need to buy for yourself that you didn't have to in a previous role?
And also accounting for things that maybe you're also not doing. Maybe you're not commuting anymore. Maybe you're not paying for parking, things like that, and kind of maybe dialing it back or evening it out with those items as well.
Yeah, such a good point. So do you have any suggestions for how an email marketer can showcase their skills as a freelancer?
That's a great question. I think email marketing is huge, and numbers and statistics will go much further than, in my opinion, other things will. How did you convert something? What were the clicks? You know, any type of finances. Did you create revenue? Did you generate profit from your email marketing campaign? Did you lead a team on the campaign? Did you have direct reports? Basically, think about yourself as a hiring manager when you're talking to these clients or potential clients, and identify the things that you would want in a perfect candidate, and I would point to those things. But ultimately, you know, these email campaigns are meant to generate profit, and being able to showcase how you do that for a client or how you have done that is my biggest piece of advice, especially if you don't have a portfolio where you can publish the content, but you can talk about the steps that you took to make it successful.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for email marketing, but really for any kind of role you're going after, like the proof is in the pudding. What numbers can you use to show, you know, your ROI, what you generated in a position? I feel like that might even be more important in a freelance role because, again, you're highly specialized when you're freelance and you tend to be more project based. So the hiring manager wants to know what kind of impact you can have from day one.
Exactly. And, you know, that's how people are looking at it, especially if they're trying to hit a certain goal of theirs. That simple fact, not being on the resume, might set you apart.
Exactly. So the next question is, I've been on the job hunt for a while looking for a full-time role. Do you think I'd have more luck finding something faster if I considered freelance?
I think if you were open to it, it's possible. I think full-time roles definitely have a longer process in terms of an interview, and maybe there's a few interviews, maybe the application process is really long, but depending on the client, I have some clients looking for freelancers. I show them your resume and information, and boom, you start the next day. And that's kind of the benefit of going through an agency with those developed relationships with the hiring managers, is we're able to kind of get you in the door that week or maybe within a week or two, whereas with full-time, there's a lot more back end work that needs to be done to onboard someone properly for a full-time role. So short answer, yes, but of course it would depend.
Definitely. And that actually ties in nicely to our next question, which is, how involved is an agency like 24/7 in finding you your next assignment when your current assignment is about to end?
That's a really good question. I think especially if you're on a placement through us already, we have a lot of visibility into what your end date might be, or, you know, what exactly you were doing in that project. But really staying in contact with your account manager and keeping them up to date on the types of stuff you're doing in that freelance role will really help us to identify that next role for you. We can start telling our clients that we have a candidate becoming available, and we can be as involved or uninvolved as you would like. I think the more communication that you have with your recruiter or account manager, the more we can step in if you need it.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. It's kind of like as much as you want or less if you don't need it.
Right.
I just saw a stat that 50% of companies are considering relying on freelancers now, you know, as an impact of the pandemic. So I do think that there is a lot of opportunity out there to be tapped into.
Totally. And I mean, I even clients that weren't doing a lot of freelance, but were doing a lot of full-time before, have completely transitioned and are looking for freelance only. So good point.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we have time for one last question. So if we don't get to your question in the workshop, I promise that we'll follow up after this, and we'll also be sharing a recording. So our last question is, how do you find companies, clients who are looking for freelance program or project managers specifically?
So many of those companies, it will depend on, you know, what their product is or what type of technological team they have. But we find clients for those roles in the same way that we would find them for creative roles. A lot of the creative people that we do work with have these teams that maybe we just didn't work with in the past, but we are working with now. So I would say it's similar to how we go after creative clients, just being tactful in what type of information you're sharing with them when you reach out, if you're reaching out on your own. So if you're a freelancer going after program product management roles, do the same thing with your social media and your LinkedIn and your resume, and really point to the things that would set you apart from your competition.
Yeah, I also think freelancing is a great way to maybe try out a new industry that you haven't worked in before, where in a full-time role, they might be looking for someone with more experience in that industry. And then specific to, project management, if you have those skills, but you want to try them out at a beauty company where historically maybe you've worked in tech, that could be a good opportunity to parlay your skills into something new.
Totally, really good point. And I think just staying up to date on how you can do that and hone in on those skills will also be a really good way to present yourself as an ideal candidate.
Exactly. So I hope that we've provided, enough information to at least get you to think about freelancing as a potential career path. As I said at the beginning, we'll be sharing a copy of the recording of the presentation as well as getting to any questions that we missed. We're also always available to answer any questions that you have specific to just getting started on this path or benefits. We know that's a hot topic and it does vary state to state. So we can answer those questions offline as well. But a big thank you to everyone for attending today, and especially to Shivani for leading us through this topic. Any final words from your end?
I think that you should put yourself out there, and if you find it interesting, you should at least think about it and talk to a recruiter or the client if you're doing it on your own and see if it's right for you. But I think freelance is a really great way to build your book and your resume and really get to know new clients and learn new things. So I'm a big proponent of it, and hopefully we can be a part of your search.
Definitely. Amazing. And yeah, on that last note, we are always posting our open jobs to 24/7's website. So if you're on the market, feel free to take a look there and apply to anything that looks like a good fit. So thanks everyone for joining. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.